how's it going? If you're anything like me, then you have some things in art teacher lane that you don't love teaching. I mean, let's be honest, you can't love everything. For me, those things that I don't love teaching would be perspective and figure drawing. Not my jam. So what did I decide to do but put them together in one project, which you think would be a total catastrophe, but it's worked out really great. So I thought I'd share it with you today. My 4th grade kids have been working on these superhero selfies. Now this is a project that takes a while for them to do, but it's really 3 different projects in one. There's a wax resist and a color theory background. We made our own scratch art paper and learned how to do perspective buildings. And then there was a big fat hairy unit on figure drawing, which you see here. The kids have really enjoyed making these superhero selfies, so much so that they're starting to add things like sidekicks, and I practically have to jerk them out of their hands so we can move on to the next project. I thought I would walk you through the steps to this project today just because my students have enjoyed it so much. All right, guys, let's talk about how to make the background for your superhero selfie. This will be the sky, and it will set the whole scene for your work of art. So what you're going to do is something called a wax resist, or in our case, we're going to call it an oil pastel resist. Now, I'm showing you these oil pastels for a couple of reasons. It's what we're using, and I just want you to see that you don't have to have brand new and glamorous art supplies to make really great works of art. So these are our oil pastels, and they're well loved and well used. And today you're going to have to decide, do you want to use all cold colors for your sky or all warm colors? Colors that are on the same side of the color wheel are called analogous colors. For example, you know that the cold colors all sit near each other on the color wheel, as do the warm colors. They are analogous colors, and they look great next to each other. However, when you start to use colors from both sides of the color wheel, when those colors combine, they make a duller color, and you might not want that in your sky. So I have decided that I'm not going to use warm colors. Instead, I'm going to go with kind of an evening sky look. So I'm using a lot of magenta. I've got purples in here, blue, and turquoise. If you want to, you can draw things in your sky first with the oil pastels. I said mine's going to be an evening sky, so maybe I'll begin by drawing some things like, I don't know, maybe a moon. I'm thinking like Vincent van Gogh has that really beautiful crescent moon in Starry Night, and I could color that in. Maybe I could add things like stars using star shapes, or even just dots like Vincent van Gogh did. It's totally up to you since you are the artist. Maybe I want to add, I don't know, mountains behind my cityscape. And I know it's hard for you to see what I'm drawing, but just wait. You'll see it once I start painting. Oil pastels have oil in them. That's why they're called oil pastels. And oil and water do not mix, meaning that once this paper gets wet, the oil in the oil pastels will push off the water. So I'm just going to add, I don't know, maybe a couple of clouds to the sky, and I'm going to start to paint. Now, when I'm painting, I'm using watercolor paint, and the thing about watercolor paint is you gotta wake it up first. So I just get my paintbrush a little bit wet and tap a little bit of water into each color. I'm not mixing the color up. I'm just kind of gently tapping water into each color to wake each one up. Now I've got my paintbrush ready. Notice my paintbrush has a nice pointy toes. My paintbrush ballerina is ready to go. And I think I'm gonna grab some of this turquoise first. And remember, when you get your paint, you can twirl it around in your cup, but you never scrub. Paintbrush ballerina is always on her tippy toes. She never scoots around on her bottom because that's not very appealing. Hey, I want to switch colors, so I know I need to take a bath. So first I dip, and then I wipe, and then I dip, and then I wipe. I think I'm going to go with magenta. And what I like to do is overlap the colors a little bit because the two colors will run together. This is called wet on wet. My paper was wet, my paintbrush is wet, and it's causing this little bit of bleed that you see, which also creates a brand new color. And you'll also notice that my moon is still there. It's not covered up by the paint. Also, when you're painting with watercolor paint, sometimes your paintbrush might get a little thirsty. You'll know it's thirsty because it'll make the scratchy sound. And if we hear anybody doing that, then that's your paintbrush's way of telling you, look, dude, I'm thirsty. I need more water and I need some more paint. So don't let your paintbrush go thirsty. Your paintbrush should glide over your painting. That's why it's paintbrush ballerina. All right, I'm almost down to my mountains, and you can see anywhere that I drew, you can still see my oil pastel lines. Let's see how that looks. Oh yeah, this is gonna make a great backdrop for my superhero selfie. I can't wait to see what you guys make. Hey, let's make scratch art paper. Scratch art paper is super fun and easy to make. You can make it with oil pastels or crayons. So this is totally something you could do at your house. So what I like to do is just grab a couple of really bright colors, because these are going to be the colors that shine through our buildings. Again, your art supplies don't have to be perfect in order to make an awesome work of art. So now that I've got some of my colors picked out, I'm going to take this oil pastel and pretend that it's sleeping. Go to sleep, oil pastel. Oh, look at that, it's horizontal, and I'm going to use it that way to rub across my paper. So my other hand is holding my paper really still, and I'm pressing down pretty firmly because I don't want to make a light value. I really want to create a dark value on my paper. So there should be very little white spots. And sometimes you can overlap those oil pastels, creating a whole new color, which I think is totally awesome. You just want to make sure that you cover the whole paper with oil pastel and that you're pressing down really, really hard so that the whole thing is what's called opaque, meaning there are no see-through or translucent spots. Once you've got your entire paper covered, you're going to do something that seems totally crazy. You're going to paint the whole piece of paper black. So let's just pretend that I have completed oil pasteling my paper, even though there are some spots that I obviously need to go back over to make sure that there are no translucent or see-through places, making the whole thing opaque. So let's just say that I finished that. My next step is to take a nice big brush and to take some black paint and paint over the whole stinking thing. I know that sounds bananas because you're probably thinking you just did all that work, scrabbling all over your paper, and now you're painting all over it. That's crazy. But wait, I'll tell you what we're up to next. So the key to doing this is just to paint and cover the whole thing. You shouldn't be able to see through the paint. You should not be able to see your oil pastel or crayon, whichever one you use. Once you've got the whole thing painted, put it on the drying rack, and we'll talk about what you're going to do once it's dry. Easy. So you remember that scratch art paper that we made? Now it's dry, and I've already started working on some of my buildings. I'm trying to create buildings that look like they are in perspective. Perspective is another word for point of view. And our point of view for this work of art is that maybe you are up in the air. Somebody is looking down on the tops of these buildings. That's our perspective or our point of view. So to create that, you're going to need some of these shapes that have been cut out for you, and you'll need some paper rulers, although for these we're just going to use them for that straight edge. We actually won't be using them for measuring. Another helpful tool you'll need is a skewer. Skewers have the nice pointed edge, so be careful. So if you have a bunch of these, a good idea is to plan out your composition. Lay them out where you think it would be a good place for your buildings to go. You might even want to think about placing your smaller buildings in the background. That will really help to show space and depth in your work of art. So I'm going to go ahead and place this one in the background. And the key is not to make it like this, but you want these shapes to run more horizontally. Hold it in place. Maybe I'll have it go right up there. And once you've got it held in place, you're going to use your stick, and I'm going to zoom in so you can really see what I'm about to do. You're going to use your stick to scratch off the black paint. That's why it's called scratch paper. You're scratching off that black paint, and you are revealing the oil pastel that you took the time to really make sure was nice and opaque. So I'm going to peel this back just so you can see it. And so you can see my line. And it's not always perfect. There's going to be some places where the paint might not peel or it might chip up. That's okay. That's why it's made by us. It's homemade and it doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm going to go across this way, and now I'm done tracing the entire thing. And if there's any edges that aren't really showing up, I can try to scratch back into it again or just leave it. Now that I've got that, I'm going to work on the sides of the building. The sides of the building are vertical. They are always vertical. They should not be angled. You want to start at a corner, so I'll put my little paper ruler there. And a way to check to see if I'm perfectly vertical and not diagonal is to look and make sure that your paper ruler is parallel or doing the same thing as the side of your paper. So I'm going to hold it really still, and I'm just drawing that line coming down like that. And then there's another point, so I'll do it right there. And I'm just going to make sure it's running parallel with this line. It makes a not very nice sound, and I apologize for that. I'm going to do the same thing here. Now, my building is not glass. You cannot see through it. And so for that reason, you would not see this line. This line is covered up by the front of the building. If my building were glass, or I was drawing a transparent shape, then I would draw that line right there. Now, here's the part where things get a little bit tricky. You want to make sure that this line, when you do your windows, is repeated over and over again. This line right here is repeated over and over again. You don't want to have any perfectly horizontal lines. If you imagine my stick as a horizontal line, if it went straight across all the way, that would immediately flatten my building. I want to create the optical illusion, the eyeball magic that my building is coming toward you and then going back into space. And the only way I can do that is to have lines that run parallel here and run parallel there. I'll show you what I mean. You can do this a lot of different ways, but I'm going to show you the easiest way. Have your stick go back up to that line, and holding it here, trace underneath this one. Repeat. So now it's copied, or it's going right up against that line I just created. There we go. And now I'm going to do the same thing here. So I've got that matched up right there. And runaway stick, and I'm going to trace. And right there. And now I've created this illusion that my building is popping out or coming toward you. If I had only used horizontal lines, that would have flattened my building. If you want to get extra fancy, you could now go back and add more windows. And I'm just, again, holding my ruler right there and tracing. If I want to turn some lights on inside of some of those windows, I can just color that in. Now, there's tons of things you can do to your buildings. You can add things to the top of your building. You could draw more designs on your building. I'm just giving you the basics. This is your city, so you create it any way that you want to. Okay, so I got rid of all those inside lines, and now I'm ready to think of the costume that I want my superhero to wear. Now, I'm going to be a super art teacher and hero, so I know that I want to have a great big crest on my shirt, kind of like Superman, but mine is maybe going to say art. I'm still thinking about this idea, so I'm just going to lightly sketch that in. I know I want a belt of some sort. Maybe it's going to be a palette. So again, my ideas are still coming to me, so I'm drawing lightly so that I can always change it. I know I want to wear a skirt, and I know that a skirt will cover up my legs, so those have to go away. There we go, and that's looking pretty good so far. I think I want a cape, but I want it to be short. There we go. And I know that I want some boots with some big old heels and maybe a pointed toe. So I'm just changing the shapes of things. I think I want rainbow tights. So I'm thinking of all the patterns and different ideas as they're coming to me. Check out my other friends' artwork and see what ideas they have, because that might inspire me too. I think I want polka dots on my skirt. I love patterns. So you might want to think about some things that you really love and include that in your superhero superhero outfit. Also think about, what is your superhero going to be good at? Mine's good at art, so that's why the outfit is very artsy. So you might want to think about that. You also might want to think about, what is your superhero carrying? I think mine are going to carry a great big pencil. I think that makes sense for a superhero who's into art. There we go. That'll be her superpower. Now I think I'm going to start to work on the hair. And you might want to think about what you want the face to look like. What kind of expression will your superhero have? Is your superhero happy? Are they doing good? Are they struggling? Are they in a fight with somebody? What kind of things are your superheroes up to? So I just gently sketched in where I know the guidelines will be for the face. I made a line for the middle. I made a line horizontally kind of through the middle for the eyes, nose, and mouth. And that just gave me an idea when I made that darker. I think I want mine to wear a mask because she has to keep her identity hidden. It's going to be a pretty fancy mask. I'll have to work on that idea some more. I like to make just a simple kind of nose. My superhero is happy. She just got done taking care of some artsy business. I think I'm going to add a bow. So take your time and really think about what's going to make your superhero unique and different. When you're done, then you can trace with a Sharpie and start to color, baby, color. But most of all, have fun. Now, once your superhero is finished and you've traced it with a Sharpie, you might want to color with colored pencils really carefully. And think about what kind of colors you want your superhero to be wearing. If you think of Superman, he wears the primary colors. Batman usually has on yellow and black. Think about 2 or maybe 3 colors that really are going to be recognizable as your superhero colors. When you cut, be really careful. This artist is still trying to figure out how he's going to get these parts cut out. Here's a hint. He's probably going to need to fold it and add a little snip. Once your superhero is done, it can then be placed in your cityscape. But think about composition. Think about where would be a good place for you to put your superhero. Is this one going to be landing? Will he be standing on a building? Is he down below and in the foreground? This artist not only drew her superhero, but she decided she wanted a sidekick. So she's worked on a little dragon for her superhero who will eventually be fighting this crazy kitty in her cityscape. I really like how she has a clock tower in her cityscape. And here's a superhero that's finished. So I hope these have inspired you to come up with great superhero works of art of your own.